Welcome to LSE's Reading Room. We're here at the top of the library on the fourth floor, and today I've got with me Sarah Edwards. Could you just say who you are?
Yes, so I'm a third year PhD student at UCL. I research contemporary feminist literature.
And my name's Debbie Chalice, and I'm the Education and Outreach Officer for LSE Library. We're here today to talk about bags. So we're talking about bags because they have for a long time been statements of feminist fashion. And Sarah's been looking at more contemporary examples, but we're up here in the reading room today to look at some historic examples. Now, I didn't bring the suffrage ones out because they're over 100 years old and I didn't want to really touch them in front of, without gloves and all that kind of thing. So, but the colours of the suffrage movement were used on bags. They didn't use text, which I think is, as we'll talk about, a bit of a more recent phenomenon. But we have an example of a suffragist bag in the colours of red, white and green. And the suffragettes were very good at applying their colours, the Women's Social and Political Union colours, that are purple, green and white, to almost everything, whether bags, shoe buckles, you name it, they had those colours on. So feminist fashion has been around for a long time. But the bags we're going to look at today are from the 1970s. The first one is from the Women's Liberation Movement, and it's part of the archive of Mothers in Action. As you can see, it's a Hessian bag with a very stark logo. The Women's Liberation Movement, fist in the kind of image for women, which is quite stark, isn't it? What do you think of that one?
Well, it's really bold, and I love how they've sort of worked the fist into the middle of that symbol as well. Yeah, it's a really exciting take on it.
It's plain on the other side. I'm sure my mum used to have bags like this. It's a very kind of 70s style, isn't it?
Yeah, with the one strap as well.
And another bag we've got next from later on in the 70s, I think it's from 79, is an American bag actually. It's on the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment was they were trying to pass it in the 1970s. It had to be ratified by so many different states in the United States of America by 1982 for it to come into law across the whole of the country. And this does actually have a statement on. It says, Equal Rights Amendment, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. And it says, we must ratify by the 6th of June, 1982. And if anybody's seen Mrs. America about Phyllis Schlafly and it's got Kate Blanchett in it, I do suggest you watch it to know all the background to the Equal Rights Amendment. Of course, it still hasn't been ratified in America because not enough states did actually ratify the treaty for it to go across America. But it does have another side as well. So it has text on one side and image on the other with a logo. So that's kind of doing more what we're going to look at today in the Being Human session about sort of actually having a text.
Yes. Yeah. That one's so much more chic, the shape of it, isn't it?
It is actually. I'm quite jealous of this one. It's the one I'd like. It's a perfect size for laptops, weirdly.
Oh.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had laptops then, obviously. And the next one, which I find quite odd to be in a museum collection, is in the Silver Moon bookshop. I'm going to hold this up because it's less fragile, which I remember. And remember the logo very well when it was on Charing Cross Road. And this is a mixture of image and the address. So there's no text on there, but this is from, I think, 2002. It came into the collection in 2010. Do you remember the silver? You're probably too young to remember the silver.
Yeah, it's before me.
That makes me feel so old. But never mind. But yes, so why do you think there's been a movement from image to text with these bags? Because today, talk us through some of the contemporary sort of feminist tote bags and what they've been doing and the sort of messaging that you've been sort of researching.
Yeah, so there definitely has been this shift. I mean, tote bags are still really popular, but as you say, we're getting more quotations on there. So we've had sort of feminist statements. There was a tote bag that was popularised by a collaboration between LUK and the Fawcett Society, and that read, "This is what a feminist looked like." This is what a feminist looks like. And that was based on their sort of T-shirt campaign as well. So that's been really popularised, that sort of assertive statement, almost labelling the wearer with it, right? And trying to do that sort of, well, I guess, addressing your expectations about what a feminist is. And then there have also been quite a lot more tote bags appearing with quotations on from really popular feminist writers. So Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, for instance, and her "We Should All Be Feminists," which of course was the TED Talk, and then she turned it into the essay, which you can now buy as like a pocketbook sized.
Oh yes, I've got the pocketbook.
Yeah, yeah. Again, another sort of portable thing you can carry with you.
Gift book, isn't it? Often, yeah.
Yes, and she's now got the one of her publishers brought out a diary, which
really?
is "We Should All Be Feminists" diary with the same book cover, and you open it up, and I guess you live your feminist life that way. But I think those tote bags where you're getting these quotations from these authors are really quite interesting because there's this quotability. With the images, we've got this sort of, and the symbols, there's like compression of ideas into a symbol. But now I think it's that idea of getting a complex idea compressed into a phrase, a slogan. And I think maybe some of the reasons why that shift is coming now is actually because of sort of the digital media we're using, right? The quotability of Twitter. What can you get into sort of a square on Instagram, something with an aesthetic background, but that's also going to catch people's attention. So I think that's one of the major factors that we've got. And I think maybe the other thing is to do with that sloganeering, that sort of economic impetus, right? Because these bags really, though we're talking about them as sort of political statements and what they do for feminism, they are feeding an economy. There's a huge gift culture economy around feminist merchandise. And that's sort of one of the difficulties to consider, really, when it comes to these sort of new bags where they've got the statements, they've got the feminist politics on view that you can wear and walk down the street with, just as you could post it as your Facebook status. But we have to kind of question, what are they actually doing?
So I was thinking about that with T-shirts, and people are almost wearing placards, aren't they? Sort of what you used to take, well, what you still take to demonstrations.
Yeah.
And so, but why bags? I mean, we have T-shirts, there's obviously banners that you can make, but why do you think the tote bag has become so important? Is it environmentalism, a reaction against plastic, that kind of thing?
Well, maybe in part there's a little bit of traction to do with that, right? I think there's a lot of people walking around with the idea that carrying a bag like this is probably better than using a plastic sort of one-use bag that you might end up throwing away. So I think there is that side to it, right? Because there's that environmental push. But I think a lot of it is sort of these earlier forms of like low-key street protest, right? The T-shirts, the banners, the pins that we'd see with like the earlier movements. There's something really interesting about how they're being aestheticized at the minute. Some of it, I think, is an interest in what's vintage and sort of rejuvenating earlier things. So I think perhaps there is that interest in bringing back bags like this, right? This, from sort of that angle. But I mean, the other thing is just really simple. I mean, it's visibility politics, right? You sort of carry a bag when you go places, and it contains things, it's useful as well. So I think very much from a practical point of view as well.
That's interesting, visibility politics, which is something obviously the suffrage movement were doing, and particularly the suffragettes with their shops that sold loads of merchandise. So there's always been a kind of commercial element to feminist fashion. I kind of would like to see the Hessian bag come back in vintage-wise. I think there's something really stylish about that. Yeah. So do you have a favourite bag?
Yes, I think I do actually. So one that I came across recently, which was by an independent seller on Etsy, is the Feminist Killjoy. So it takes a Sara Ahmed statement of the Feminist Killjoy, that's sort of reclaiming the term really that's usually leveraged against feminists and claiming it as a positive thing. And on that bag, it just has the Feminist Killjoy statement, and above it, it's got these sort of really bright sunshine yellow flowers atop sort of green stems. And I just like it because it seems to get to the root of something that I noticed with a lot of these bags, which is that there's a real tension sometimes between a really assertive phrase and then a conflicting image, something that sort of maybe seems to be hyper-feminized or something that seems to soften the blow of the statement. And it's not just on that bag. You spot it a lot, and I think part of it is it captures that sort of the balance that feminist writers perhaps sometimes feel they have to strike, particularly in a publishing industry, between being provocative and being palatable, right? Being marketable, putting ideas out there that someone can actually market. That's something that my research has been focusing on a lot recently. So that bag where you see sort of the assertive idea and sort of the force of being a feminist killjoy, right? Sort of juxtaposed and contrasted against those lovely sunshine flowers.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's like the kind of idea in the women's liberation movement had the bitch manifesto and that kind of thing,
Yes.
which they used really assertive words.
Yeah.
To kind of, that were quite shocking actually.
Yeah.
But did it to kind of, you know, reclaim or even just claim, you know, rights for themselves. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.